Good evening, everyone. What I would be discussing next 20 minutes or so about the role of insulin resistance in a pathogenesis of Asian Indian population and how actually is the place of pioglitazone specifically for the Indian Asians who are having a insulin resistance. It's just a symbolic case which all of us are seeing day to day in our routine clinical practice. A 44-year-old gentleman, diabetes for last 3 years, is a taxi driver with a sedentary and irregular lifestyle, skipping meals off and on. He's a smoker, he takes alcohol, and he's on metformin 1 gram per day and glimepiride 2 mg once a day in the morning. He has acanthosis, central obesity, high BMI, hypertension, dyslipidemia, and A1C is around 8.3. So he's a typical type 2 diabetic patient with a central obesity, and he has a failure to the glimepiride and metformin, though we have scope to increase both. So how actually we should be managing such type of the patients? Of course, we would re-emphasize the need of lifestyle modifications, but we have to understand the certain limitations of lifestyle modification. So he needs a addition of a drug like a pioglitazone was added to this patient. So 15 mg was added once a day and glimepiride was continued and metformin was continued. So after a month, his fasting and postprandial started coming down without getting too much of hypoglycemia. So he was advised to continue on the three drug oral anti-diabetic agents. After 3 months, when he came back for the follow-up, he had a A1C of 6.9 and he has fasting of 94 and postprandial of 120. So he's not getting hypoglycemia, but still he is coming under the target, and we don't want with a irregular lifestyle letting him to go for the hypoglycemia. We reduce the dose of glimepiride to 1 mg from 2 mg. So what is actually the insulin resistance? We all know this very well, that main insulin resistance occurs is at a muscle, fat, and the liver tissue, where in spite of having abundant sugar into the blood because of the resistance to insulin, the cells are unable to utilize this glucose for energy and the metabolism. That is how we develop a hyperglycemia. So what is a correlation between Indian typical phenotype and the insulin resistance? We all know that we don't have a usually very high BMI. Even with the low BMI or even in a normal BMI, we have got a more abdominal fat. That is how we internationally now known fat, known term as a thin fat Indian. We are more insulin resistance, more hyperinsulinemia. We have more inflammatory markers in our body, low level of adiponectin. We have got typical dyslipidemia, which is again characteristic of a insulin resistance, high triglyceride, low HDL, and high level of small dense LDL. And this all together not only just makes the person more prone to get the diabetes, or more prone to get the atherosclerotic events. So if you compare the Japanese, Mexican, and Indian populations and see the prevalence of the insulin resistance, it is highest among the Indians compared to Mexican, and the Japanese as the least among these study populations. And this is reflected into the socio-economical status also. Higher the socio-economical status, more would be the insulin resistance, maybe because of the bad lifestyle which comes with the increase in the income, central obesity, more sedentary life, more stress also is there. So insulin resistance leads to the hyperinsulinemia with a pre-diabetic stage. Then beta cells fail to produce enough insulin to keep the sugar into the normal range, and then there is a development of type 2 diabetes. So associated symptoms, though they may not be present, but excess hunger, specifically 2 to 3 hours after the food, people feel more hungry, weight gain, intestinal bloating, sleepiness after the meals, depression, presence of acanthosis, presence of hypertension, central obesity. So who has a more insulin resistance? If you take the type 2 diabetic population, 90% have insulin resistance. If you take the dyslipidemic population, 88%. If you take hypertensive CHD patients, almost more than 50% would have underlying resistance as one of the important pathophysiological defect present in such type of the populations. So what is the pathophysiology of insulin resistance? It is mainly twofold. One is the elevated free fatty acid levels due to obesity, specifically central obesity causes insulin resistance. On top of that, if there is a refined carbohydrate, which leads to the increase in the appetite, overeating, unwanted weight gain, and high blood sugars, requiring more insulins to compensate to have the normoglycemia. So again, putting beta cell at a more stress. So this is how actually the insulin resistance occurs. There is a hepatic level, there is a impaired hepatic insulin signaling, leads to decreased insulin activations, leading to decrease into hepatic glycogen synthesis and more production of the hepatic gluconeogenesis. So there is a more glucose coming out of the liver when actually it is not required. So among the natural history of type 2 diabetes, insulin resistance is the first primarily pathophysiology in almost 90 to 95% of type 2 diabetic patients, which remains more or less static all throughout the course of type 2 diabetes. But unfortunately, beta cell starts gradually falling because to overcome the insulin resistance, beta cell had to work harder and harder, and that actually leads to the beta cell fatigue. So there is a gradual beta cell dysfunctions. So what are the common clinical markers of the insulin resistance? Waist circumference, increase in the BMI, waist hip ratio, which is high, neck circumference also is elevated. And another laboratorical investigations are the euglycemic hyperinsulinemic study, not used for the routine clinical practice. HOMA, yes, we can do. And when we can even simple hyperinsulinemia against the fasting hyperglycemia also is a marker of a insulin resistance. So what is the correlation between the insulin resistance and a cardiometabolic risk in a type 2 diabetic patients? If you see the cardiovascular disease burden in type 2 diabetes is mainly not just linked with the hyperglycemia, it is also linked independently with the amount of insulin resistance, adipose tissue inflammations, and decrease into the insulin secretions, leading to the increase into the platelet activity, endothelial dysfunction, vascular inflammation. So all this as a result of insulin resistance would aggravate the atherosclerotic vascular process and leads to the unfortunate micro and macrovascular complications. So if you see the Indian data from the southern part of the India, and you see the number of abnormality in a presence or absence of the insulin resistance, whether you took a low HDL, those who have insulin resistance has a low HDL, high triglyceride, high blood pressure, more hyperglycemia, and more family history of type 2 diabetes. So those who have insulin resistance naturally would have a more chance of all metabolic abnormality, what we see commonly in our type 2 diabetic patients. And if you take the normal weight versus overweight populations and see the cardiometabolic abnormality clustering, and you see with the HOMA IR values, the normal values with the normal individuals would have a less cardiometabolic lab abnormalities, and more the weight, more is the insulin resistance, more abnormality of the cardiometabolic markers are seen. So again, emphasizing the need of tackling the insulin resistance in a timely manner, not only to have the good glycemic control, but to prevent the beta cell exhaustion and probably to decrease the atherosclerotic cardiovascular disease. So this is a very beautiful study in around 94,000 Chinese adults where they compared the risk factors associated with the insulin resistance and the beta cell dysfunctions, and what is more contributing to the cardiometabolic disorders. Higher the insulin resistance, you can see from quantile 1 to quantile 5, higher the insulin resistance, more percentage of the people would have more than one cardiometabolic abnormalities, as against the lower the beta cell functions, again translating into the hyperglycemia, but then the cardiometabolic disorders would be slightly less. But if unfortunately in Indian populations, we got a combination of both high insulin resistance and decreasing beta cell functions, again making us more prone to have more cardiometabolic disorders translating into the atherosclerotic cardiovascular or the cerebrovascular disease. So how to tackle this insulin resistance? We know hyperglycemia, and the drugs which work beautifully on the insulin resistance are metformin and the glitazone group of the medications. So apart from medications, a good exercise at least 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week would significantly reduce the insulin resistance, even though patient may not reduce the body weight as per their desire. So by exercising, muscle will burn more stored glucose, and then there is a decrease in the muscular insulin resistance. Healthy lifestyle leading to weight loss, smoking cessation also helps to reduce or reverse insulin resistance. And we got a medications like metformin and the glitazones groups of the medications. So what is the effectiveness and safety of pioglitazone combination in an Indian type 2 diabetic patient? This is a study published in the British Journal of Medical and the Health Research. And here the safety and the efficacy of pioglitazone in a combination with metformin and glimepiride was studied in around 600 population patients. On top of glimepiride metformin, if you add the pioglitazone, A1C reduction is 1.6%. Fasting blood glucose reduced by 45 and postprandial also reduced by 61%. So it is found to be quite effective as far as the glycemic parameter is concerned. What about the antioxidant potential of metformin and pioglitazone in type 2 diabetic patient? We know that atherosclerosis or endothelial dysfunctions, and you have a good antioxidant potential of any medications or lifestyle changes or dietary changes would help for endothelial dysfunctions. So by giving metformin or pioglitazone, there is a significant reduction with the improvement in the oxidative stress more with the pioglitazone compared to the metformin therapy. So naturally, we also have observed that pioglitazone is more powerful insulin sensitizers compared to metformin, and ideally is of course the combination of both. So effect of continuing versus discontinuing pioglitazone when starting bedtime insulin in a patient who are poorly controlled with type 2 diabetes. So if you are starting the basal insulins like glargine and you are continuing versus stopping the pioglitazones, those who are continuing on the pioglitazone has a significantly better HbA1c control, and reduction into the fasting plasma glucose was also much better. But the $1,000,000 question about the safety of pioglitazone. After rosiglitazone controversy, people are worried about the long-term safety of this group of medications. So I will try to highlight demystifying the myth of cardiovascular side effects of the pioglitazone. This is we all know proactive study which showed a cardiovascular neutrality with the pioglitazone. But 10-year follow-up study after the proactive study was over, there was no statistically significant difference into the primary endpoints for the people who were originally on pioglitazone versus on standard care other than pioglitazones or the therapy. And what was the primary endpoints here? All-cause mortality, MI, cardiac intervention, stroke, major leg amputation, leg revascularization, or MI, stroke, or any cause mortality. So there was not difference between pioglitazone arm versus the standard care arm. And you can see here the forest plot of primary composite endpoints with the pio versus standard care arm. Primary composite endpoint, all-cause mortality, non-fatal MI, stroke, non-fatal MI individually, non-fatal stroke individually, cardiac intervention, major leg amputation, bypass surgery. There was no statistical difference. So there was no safety signal after 10 years of the proactive follow-up study that pioglitazone group in any way increases any morbidity or the mortality as far as the atherosclerotic event is concerned. So you can see all-cause mortality, which would include the carcinoma-related mortality also, did not show any statistically significant difference even after total period of 13 years of follow-up. So what about the LV dysfunctions? We all know that pioglitazone would lead to weight gain, increase into the plasma volume. So those who have got a LV dysfunction to start with, because of the fluid overload, there would be precipitation of LV dysfunctions and acute LV dysfunctions. But what about the diastolic dysfunction? If you give a pioglitazone where there is no systolic dysfunctions, it improves the myocardial glucose uptake, it improves the perfusion, it improves the diastolic dysfunction. So giving in a diabetic patient without significant LV systolic dysfunction is not harmful. What about the pioglitazone exposure and the risk of all-cause mortality in an insulin-treated patient with a type 2 diabetes study? Again, this is a Taiwanese study, and you can see this is a 13-year follow-up study, retrospective study of around 20,000 patients. Those who are on pioglitazones with insulins, and those who are on not on pioglitazone but on insulin therapy. Those who are on insulin with pioglitazone has a less overall cardiovascular mortality. Cardiovascular events also was less. So mortality rate did not show any increase, but it showed a trend towards some significant, statistically significant reduction into the all cause as well as the cardiovascular events. So again, re-emphasizing that it is not harmful to the heart unless patient has a bad LV systolic dysfunctions. So what are the global and Indian clinical evidence for the pioglitazone? We have talked about the proactive study, and there are lots of Indian studies which again boosted our confidence that our old age friend pioglitazone, which was not available for some time, and we show that we all have experienced that when the pioglitazone was not available, patients who were on pioglitazone containing therapy, many of them were stable even after a few years where they did not come for any follow-up. So this is a proactive study, efficacy and safety data. Naturally, the first part showed that it is quite effective and with slight increase into weight and the edema. But you can see addition of pioglitazone to metformin sulfonylurea patients led to further 1% reduction into the HbA1c, and need of insulin was significantly reduced if the patient is on sulfonylurea metformin. On top of that, if patient is given pioglitazone, because of the significant reduction into the insulin resistance, the beta cell exhaustion would decrease, and need of a permanent insulin therapy also was significantly reduced in this proactive study population. This is a tried study from India. Their A1C reduction was compared with metformin, glimepiride, and pioglitazone, and then premix insulin with metformin, and it showed that A1C reduction was almost similar whether patient was on premix insulin with metformin or triple drug oral anti-diabetic therapy. The tried study again, C-peptide levels also showed slightly better with the glimepiride metformin pio compared to insulin metformin therapy, mainly because insulin will only help in beta cells by reduction into the glucotoxicity, while pioglitazone on top of the reduction in the glucotoxicity would reduce the insulin resistance. So there would be slightly better beta cell function preservation with triple drug combination therapy. So if I conclude my talk, diabetic epidemic experience in India may be due to not only strong genetic factors, which has significantly increased with rapid change in urbanization and lifestyle changes leading to high insulin resistance. For Asian Indian populations, we got a bad phenotype, we got a central obesity, increased visceral fat. So even with the less increase in the central obesity, we are more centrally obese and we are more insulin resistance. So there is a sufficient evidence that many environmental factors adversely related to glucose intolerance are modifiable through lifestyle changes. So that is a cornerstone of any chronic disease therapy. So considering that Indians are having a more insulin resistance, right, before onset of type 2 diabetes, it is advisable to have the healthy lifestyle and have the diets which are rich in fibers, exercise, try to reduce the central obesity, stress reduction, avoiding smoking or the tobacco usage. So this is the need of the hour to reduce the diabetes and diabetic related complication burden. Among the pharmacotherapy, along with the metformin, I think pioglitazone addresses the critical aspects in the Indian type 2 diabetic patient, that is insulin resistance. So intensifying the existing oral therapy, if there is no contraindication, adding pioglitazone would significantly improve the glycemic control, but it will reduce the progression of beta cell deterioration and need of insulin therapy in the future. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.